Welcome back to Area Ordnance Depot. At one of our viewers' requests, we are going to go over the fire control group and retaining methods for the Kalashnikov and installation. First, I'm going to go over some of the various retainers. This is a standard AK wire retainer for a stamped gun. Stamped receiver gun, and this is a modified retainer using an original retainer auto spring. This is a commercially available retainer that we sell at areaordnancedepot.com, and these are hardware store E-clips. And then we have this, which is often used in milled receiver guns. This one came out of a Chinese milled receiver. And the way these work is these are your two axis pins. The forward one would be your hammer, and this would be your trigger pin. You'd have the center support bar in the receiver. This would, in an auto gun, would lace through. Your sear would slip in here through the center, and then it would rest underneath the hammer. The hammer pin would rest like this, and then the trigger pin like that. So you'd have tension on all three and keep them from backing out, because this would hit up against the wall. So since we're not using auto parts, what we can do to modify this is cut it here and take that and take some of the bend out down on the end, and then we can lace that up through the magazine well between the hammer pin and the center support, so it wraps over top of the hammer pin. And then when I install them, I push down on them with a screwdriver and guide it underneath the trigger pin, so it rests like that, with the hooking area surrounding the center support. And that's a very effective way to use a part that comes in a kit that you're not going to need anyhow. Or you can purchase one of these retainers, and these retainers work very nicely because the front hooks around the hammer pin, it drops down onto the trigger pin, and then your selector lever retains the top end of it like that, holding everything in place. The other method is the hardware store E-clips. Now, I have not been lucky enough to find the E-clips that are the proper thickness to work with these. They always tend to move a little bit. They're not perfect. Now, this is another method. This is the retaining wire. This lays in the bottom of the receiver. The hammer pin goes above it, and the trigger pin would go below it, and then it would be retained by the selector lever again. So there's our four basic methods there. We're going to move to this side and we're going to talk trigger. The triggers we have are a Chinese set here, hammer, trigger, and disconnector. This is a double hook setup. And as you can see here, we have some single hooks, and these are European, this is Chinese, and they all set and hold the hammer at different levels. And what I mean by holding the hammer is they hold the hammer here until you pull the trigger, it releases the hammer, and it lets it strike the firing pin. If you get a commercially made Tapco G2 set, it's going to be most like the Chinese. You can buy these in single or double hook setups like that. We're going to get this out of the way. I'm going to show you how to install your Tapco G2 set. You should already have these with your either parts kit or your existing Kalashnikov. And we're going to take Insert this little spring into the disconnector, set it in the little pocket of the trigger, put our cross sleeve through it. Now leave it about halfway, and we'll just drop that into our receiver in the trigger area. If you ever lose or break that spring in the disconnector, a ballpoint pen spring will work in an emergency. With this hammer spring, these gears here actually help reset the trigger on the back. You want the pointy ends face down, the striking surface of the hammer to face down, and install the spring like so. And now what I like to do is I'll take this left spring leg and stick it alongside of the hook on the trigger, turning the hammer sideways, get it below the rails, and then straighten it back out. And I take a screwdriver and I lift the ends of the spring so they set on the back of the trigger, keeping a little thumb pressure back here. We put an axis pin through, line it up on the other side, which is sometimes a bit of a task. There we are. And now those springs, the spring should be hooking on each side here. And we'll put our trigger axis pin in, install that. There we are. And as I said, I like to use these. I do like to use these retainers there. So nice and easy to use. Sometimes, depending on the manufacturer of the receiver, they may need to be fitted a little bit. And we'll put our selector lever in here. And that locks and retains everything. Everything's back in installed form. So I hope that's helpful, and have a nice day.